Tech Jacks here. This video is a follow-up to the video that we did about setting up our discovery methods. In our discovery methods, one of the things that we did when we did our Active Directory and our Active Forest discovery was there was an option for it to automatically find boundaries and things like that, IP address ranges that were set up in our sites and services in our Active Directory. So as a quick reference, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys what we did before, and then we're going to go ahead and look into actually configuring our client so that when we push our SCCM client to our workstation, it can configure our workstation to take on certain characteristics and have certain properties and customize configurations so that we can manage our environment a little bit better. So under our boundaries, as you can see, the default first site name is our Active Directory site. I did not configure this or customize it at all. That's why it has that name. If we were to go into Active Directory, Sites and Services, you'll be able to see that that's the name of our site by default. Default first name, site name is, well, that's the name of it. So if I wanted to change this, I can go ahead and go to Properties, and I can give it a description. And I can put subnets and additional information here. However, we're going to leave this fine for now because right now we don't really have a need to customize this anymore. However, if I did want to set up subnets and things like that, I would be able to go ahead and do so here. So let me go ahead and get out of here. Get back to our SCCM box. Now in SCCM, you're going to have boundaries and you're going to also have boundary groups. Boundary groups are going to be clusters of boundaries that you can tie together so that if you deploy to them or if they're all belonging to, say you have 4 or 5 different IP subnets and you wanted them to belong to this one particular boundary. Your boundary was, say, a location, a physical location, a city, a town, and you wanted to say, well, all the subnets between these subnets, these belong to this boundary group. So that's how you would go ahead and select that. If we wanted to create just a basic boundary group, we can do something like main boundary, and we can say for TJ headquarters. And I can click add. And as you can see, I only have one boundary that's associated with it. So I can add my default first site name boundary to it, and well, that would pretty much be it. Under the reference tab, you can see that there's a site assignment. You can use the boundary group for site assignment, and here you have additional options. So that means that if the boundary group, you can assign it to different management points or distribution points via that way, but we're going to go ahead and use the same assignment site that we currently have. Our site system server for that boundary is going to be our CM01. So I'm going to go ahead and click there and add that, and it's a fast connection. This also helps when it comes to, I guess, pulling down software. If it's considered a slow connection, then it can fall back to a boundary group in a site system or a distribution point that you've designated or management point that you've designated as being a fallback if the only options that it has is to connect to a slow connection site. But this is a fast connection because we're all on the same LAN here. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. So we went ahead and set up that particular boundary group. So now what I want to go ahead and do is actually start looking at our client settings. What we're going to go ahead and do is create a customized client settings for our workstations, because I want this to be different than what may be for servers or something like that. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is, on the ribbon, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a custom client device setting. And I'm going to name it Workstation. And for this, you can see that there's an option of customized settings that you can have that is different from the default client settings behind it. So what I want to go ahead and do is select a few options just to do some testing with. So let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and click through. I'm going to grab, meter internet connection. Let's see, power, management, remote tools, software metering, software inventory, user and device infinity. Okay. And you also have things like client policy and compliance settings and things like that. So I'm going to go back in the workstation, and here you can start setting up like your specific changes. So I'm going to go ahead and allow uh, for our client communications on media internet connections. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to limit that from block. Power management, yes, we want to be able to, affect the power management of our system. So by default, it looks like it's set to yes. For our remote tools, we want to go ahead and configure, um, enable remote control on our client computers. This will allow us to actually use the SCCM to remote control our users' devices. So say, for instance, we were providing troubleshooting or support via SCCM and we needed to remote connect to somebody's machine and see what there was on their screen. Well, this setting here what allows for us to control that option. And speaking of which, I'm going to go ahead and pause real quick because I'm going to bring up a test machine so that at the end of this, we can see how when this setting is applied to it, it actually is going to go ahead and work. So I'm going to go ahead and pause and you're not going to notice. Like I said, it was going to be quick. The Zed's computer is now up. So let me go ahead and finish configuring our configurations. We're going to go ahead and do this for our domain. And users, as you can see, there are a lot of device settings here that allow for you to change certain things. So let's go ahead and take a look at them. This is one that I had a question about, so I want to go ahead and give it its full due. So for the remote tools, as you can see, there are some options here for getting remote access to a machine. One of the options here is users can change the policy or notification settings in software servers. So we're probably going to leave that as a no because we really don't want users having any control. Do we want to allow remote control of an unattended computer? Well, in our scenario, we're IT, we're the system engineers, we're the desktop engineers, we're the server administrators. We want as much powerful, control as we want. So yes. Prompt users for remote control permission. So this is a little bit tricky. I've been in environments where they wanted to allow the users to get a prompt because the users might have some secret document, with some secret recipe up on their desktop or, financial data on there that you really have to worry about who has the right access to and who has the permissions to view it. In other scenarios, there were situations where people did not know how to click yes or didn't know how to give rights, or the users might have said that you can take control of my computer. I'm going to run to lunch for 15 or 20 minutes. Please feel free to have at it. And if there's a prompt and no one clicks it, then you can't do the work at the moment that the users actually give for you to do it. So I guess it's up to you and your situation what you want to do. In my lab, I want all control. I'm going to go with no. I don't want to get any prompt. Here's an option here for grant remote control permission to local administration group. So if you are a local admin or you create a local admin restricted group for any reasons, for troubleshooting purposes, you can go ahead and select here to give those people a permissions. And here we have access level allowed. You can give full control, view only, or no access. So we want full control. In scenarios, view only might come in handy, maybe if it was role based, but this is a client device setting. So, in that situation, you're going to do and cause a lot more work for yourself depending on what it is that you want to do. Here we have an option for permitted viewers of remote control and remote assistance. So here we can go ahead and configure the client settings and add a particular security group or a particular person who may have the rights to go ahead and view that. I might just go ahead and go with domain admins right now. If I had set up a group for SCCM engineers, and I would add those guys there. But in this particular scenario, I'm going to be a domain admin in my lab. So instead of giving it to like all users or authenticated users or just everybody, there will be, it's going to be set up for the one right there. We also have a show session notification icon on taskbar. So that'll give information to whether or not a session is currently taking place. You can go yes or no there, but that might be handy for when you are logging in with users and there's a notification there for them. You can also show session connection bar, or you can also play a sound on the client at the beginning and at the end of the session. So obviously you're getting a decent amount of options here that you can set. You can also manage unsolicited remote assistant settings. Manage unsolicited remote assistant settings. Again, maybe I read that wrong. Why? Oh, solicited and unsolicited. That's the issue. I don't have on my glasses, just in case you guys didn't know. Level of access for remote assistance. This is interesting. I'm going to go remote or full control here. Manage remote desktop settings. Allow permitted viewers to connect by using remote desktop connection in RDP, yes. And require network level authentication on computers that run Windows Vista operating systems or later. So this is one of those settings that when you configure RDP in your environment, that you don't want machines that don't have a certain level of security in place to be able to connect to devices. You want to at least enable this so that you don't have old legacy machines that are able to allow people to get into and compromise your security even more. So right now, this looks pretty good. And again, certain settings might change. You might wonder, why did I do this and not do that? Well, keep wondering. You have the ability to make it whatever you want in your environment. In my environment, I'm going to select that stuff and get through it so we can go ahead and move forward. So one of the things that we would have to do now is deploy. So what should I do? Well, I can't really deploy it to all systems, because if all systems, if it was deployed to all systems, I'm going to hit the servers and I'm going to hit the DCs. I haven't done any collections to filter out how it is that my machines are being handled. So what I'm going to actually do is go ahead and create a quick collection for just my workstations. And of course, it can be different in your environment, what naming convention that you want to give to your workstations. And here I'm going to create a device collection, and I'm going to call this like Windows user devices. So I'm going to go ahead and browse, and I can grab all systems, or I can grab my all desktops and server clients. In this particular scenario, we don't really have much to grab from. We have all systems, we have all desktop, server, and client. So we would have to customize this a little bit more in order to do a better filter of what it is that we are particularly doing. But this is a custom setting for workstations. We're not really giving permissions or setting workstation I guess customized settings that would we wouldn't want on a server. I'm giving it to domain admins. I'm giving them the ability to log in, so we don't really have to be too upset about that. And we're going to go ahead and add a rule. I'm going to do what we could do is we could do an exclude collection. We could grab all our servers and put those in the collection and then exclude that, so that those members never show up in here and that client setting wouldn't actually get applied to it. However, for the sake of brevity and the sake of not making this a lot more difficult than what it is, because this is a rabbit trail and I can take this a little bit too deep, I'm going to just deploy it to all systems because it is much simpler in this particular scenario to go ahead and do so. So let's go ahead and go with all systems and device collections for now. There might be scenarios in which you would need to do it a little bit different, or configure it, filter it, organize it. That's going to be based on you. I'm going to actually do a quick couple of changes here in our default setting so that these get applied as well, because one was for workstations, one's going to be for servers, and this is going to hit both, right? And the priority is the one that determines which settings get applied from what. So in default default client settings, I might have a client policy for workstations, and I might have a client policy for default client settings. But whichever one has the higher priority will get the priority when it comes to that setting being applied. So for here, I just want to go ahead and I'm going to change a few settings like, let's see, the client policy, I want this to run every 30 minutes. So this will allow for SCCM to check back in and get new user updates and new policies and things like that. For our compliance settings, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that this does a daily check. So I'm going to set this to like 8 and then go to hours, because in my environment it's so small, I want my policies and things that I run to, show up pretty quickly. In my computer agent here, this is a big one. This is where you can do things like set deployment deadlines for if you send out a deployment and it's required or it needs to be installed, and you set up maintenance windows. You can set up how much time his user has and things like that before it automatically installs and what the deadline is. You can also set up default application catalog website points and things like that. So let's go ahead and go through a few of these. So for here, our organizational name displayed in our software center, our organization name is TechJax. No, actually, let's come up with a different name. Let's call it Debo's parts. Okay. And we can go ahead and make sure that in our software center, that's our organization name. Let's see, what else can we go ahead and set in here? We can go ahead and we can configure things like install permissions. All users have the ability to install. So if we, send software to the software center, would they be able to install? Yes, because if it's in the software center, we want them to be able to install. We also have our PowerShell execution policy. So if we didn't have a policy set in our domain for how PowerShell would be able to execute, if it wasn't bypass or all that stuff, you can set it so that if you deployed a PowerShell script or install via SCCM, that it would automatically allow for you to set what kind of policy would occur. So you can set like bypass here so that the execution policy is bypassed and it automatically runs. You can also show notifications for new deployments. You can disable the deadline randomization. You can allow Silverlight applications to run in elevated trusted mode. So there are different options that you can set here. Obviously, again, TechNet will be your friend for finding out exactly what it is and default settings it does, and in your environment what you need to set it as. We're going to take a look at hardware inventory. Select this like maybe once a day in our environment, even though we're using only VMs and things like that. But when we start doing different tests, you'll be able to see more. Power management I'm doing with group policy, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that to no. Probably do power management with the default workstation client. And we're going to go ahead and set up inventory. So here you can set what kind of files that you want to inventory here. Go ahead and go select types. We'll go ahead and do like .exe. So this will go ahead and find the .exe files on a machine. That's software. Software metering, we're just gonna go ahead and go no. So software updates, if you configure software updates through SCCM, then you're gonna have to make sure that here that it's configured to allow it to work. So when we reach a deadline, we want the updates to install. If it's a critical update and things like that, when it hits the deadline, it has to go. So we're going to set this like 1 day. Period of time for which all pending deployments with deadline this time will also be installed. We're going to just leave that at 1 hour. User device and affinity. Allow users to find their primary device. Well, in situations in which, you know, that's actually an option and feasible and people can have multiple devices, that would be handy. Go ahead and click OK there. I'm also going to go ahead, everybody's going to get the default one. So that's fine. So we went ahead and we configured some client settings here. The next thing we need to do is go ahead and make sure that our machines can get our configuration client pushed to them installed. So in the next video, we'll go ahead and do that. But this video, we went ahead and took a look at some client settings and configuring some client settings so that when the client is on our machine, we'll be able to remote in.